What is going on, you guys? It's your boy, Mr. MK here, and we're back with episode 57 of the video game therapy series. If things look and feel and sound a bit different, that's because they are. I switched over to trying to run Minecraft on my Arch installation instead of my little Windows partition, which will be a permanent change from here on out. So I'm still figuring out the key bindings. It's not really working for some reason. I'll have to investigate that, but that's kind of what you sign up for, I think, when you make the permanent switch over to a Linux distro instead of something like Windows, where it's either possible and easy or it's impossible and you can't do it. So anyway, yeah, let's see. Yeah, I guess we'll get into the topics here. Something I find annoying, that I don't know, that seems all over the place. I'm critical of economic heads or econ heads and people that are overly, and some of these are free market idealists who just view everything as a free market, as this perfect world that we all live in, and they often quote axioms like there's no such thing as a free lunch. You know, we've all heard that one, but even ones like never do a good job for free or never do something for free that someone would have paid for. And I don't know if the exceptions here are inbuilt, that like, oh, if you're doing something for your mom, it's obviously like an exception or something like that. But just the idea that like, just because you're not getting paid to do something, you should do a shitty job, or is a terrible attitude to have. And I feel like you can't have that attitude and then complain about anything in the world, actually, because that's simply what, I don't know, some people really take that thought to the extreme, and then they make these businesses that extract the highest possible amount of money from somebody, willingly or unwillingly, because they're able to, right? And then you're like, well, you should be kind and blah blah blah. But then you're like, also like, oh, never do a good job for free, or never do something for free that somebody's willing to pay for. It's like, no, I do stuff for free all the time that should cost a lot of money, but I'm probably doing it either because I think it's good for me, or it's helpful for the person that I'm doing this for, or they're like my family, or there's some relation there that it goes beyond, transcends this stupid value. Now, granted, if some dude approached me on the street and is like, hey man, can you like make me a website? I'm not gonna be like, oh sure, I'll whip you up one. And I'm not saying you do everything for free. That's not the extreme of this, but I think peddling a thought that like, even for your mom or your brother or someone, you have to like charge people stuff for, even just like family, friends, even if something that's you're getting something out of it. Like if somebody tasked me to do some kind of project, but I knew that I would, it's like they said, build a deck or something, and I wasn't doing anything, and they had all the materials there. I didn't pay for anything, and they were just like, oh, spend the day building the deck. Now, granted, that's probably a terrible example, because you're not gonna build a deck for someone that's not gonna pay you. But either way, I think I would be happy to do something like that on an afternoon for a family friend for nothing, because I get a chance to be outside. I get to use my hands and mess around, and I'll probably learn something about deck building, or I don't know, some shit like that. You always learn something with something like those. But the idea that you always have to be like, well, pay up, that it's just such a, I don't know, it's so, just feels so scummy. It feels like that's kind of the problem, is everyone has this idea that you always need to be extracting value from things, and whatever happened to just doing stuff because it's money just not being a part of it, right? Money doesn't need to be the intermediary interaction between everything, right? I think if you look back at the old barter system, there was surely unequal trades. Maybe somebody abused the idea, abused the unequal trades of the barter system, right? They would trade their daughter for like a goat or something, which is like ridiculously unequal, but the idea was like, hey, look, man, I'm obviously getting shafted here. You're going to have my back at some point, right? At some point we'll even it out. And that's kind of been my mentality, especially with friends paying friends back on things. So a lot of times if I live with roommates or something, I don't sweat the whole Venmos and, make sure you pay me for this or do that. A lot of times I'm just like, look, man, when the next thing comes around, and sure, maybe I lose that over time. I don't care. Right? I don't care. What is it? $12 worth of fucking Taco Bell or something that, I'm going to lose out on. It's like, I don't know. You think you just really spending like mental and emotional effort on it, to me, is less worth the while than just not worrying about it. Cause it's counting beans really. And pennies, right? It doesn't matter. It's frivolous. But I don't know. I suppose, not that I don't want to get too sidetracked here, but the general idea that you should never do a good job for free, or that you should never do something for free that someone would have paid for, or like even just taking the maximum of, there's no such thing as a free lunch, it can just put you into this, in my view, a scummy mindset. And I'm not saying that it's a capitalist mindset is always a scummy mindset, but because there's times I think it's okay to think like a capitalist, I suppose, in that regard. But I don't know, this also depends on how you define that. Some people define that in a way that I would agree that you should never think like a capitalist. But I don't know, I disagree with a lot of traditional definitions of things, in the sense of how they define certain terms. Sure, if you can define any word, if you're in charge of how the word is defined, you can make everyone seem like a fucking scumbag, right? And then someone calls somebody a capitalist, or they are a self-proclaimed capitalist, and because you've defined capitalism as this dirty word, or you've interpreted the definition in a dirty way, then you're going to view everybody that it's like that as dirty. So I don't know. I try not to pay too much mind to specific words and how they're defined. I try to use multiple words to define things a lot of times. That's why I like using slashes, especially when I'm writing. I'll use this/this, and I'll actually put the slash. And it's not really good writing style, because they're like, well, it's, these extra, you call it one word, but the issue is, depending on who I'm talking to here, these words mean different things. And someone that views, a word in a certain way, or has a certain we use all connotations of words. Some words you don't feels icky. Other words, I don't know. Some people have emotional attachment to certain words, whether you like it or not. But I use two words to try and triangulate. I suppose I use three to really triangulate, but I use multiple words to define something, because it often helps in clarifying what I specifically I mean with a definition. And while that is, I suppose, bad writing style, I don't really care most of the time, because I think it is it's clearer, right? If I define thing as capitalist / businessman, it's not necessarily if you have a negative view of a capitalist, you might interpret the word businessman differently. But and I use it for adjectives a lot of the times too, because if I describe a word with one adjective, you might get a very, very specific sense of what I mean by that, but that's often not entirely accurate or true to its form or what I mean. So I don't know. I think we should normalize using slashes, this/this, because I think it does give you, I don't know, for me at least, it's a more accurate, allows me to more accurately define something, because I get 2 tries, 3 slashes is probably too much, but 2 tries at least gives you a better ballpark, right? You get 2 data points to make a call on what a word means instead of just one. So I don't know, this/this is fine. But anyway, I already got sidetracked from whatever the hell I was talking about. But yeah, the whole Econ 101, no such thing as a free lunch. I don't know, never do anything for free kind of thing. I do plenty of stuff for free all the time, and maybe I'm on the losing end of it, and maybe maybe it's the death of me, right? Maybe it was a foolish mistake by me, and me doing stuff for free sets this precedent. And I don't know, I don't mean to say that, be a bitch and do whatever anyone tells you to do all the time, because that's even farther from the truth. But I think especially is don't always seek to extract the maximum amount of value from it as possible, especially when personal relationships are involved. Now, the way I will contest this against myself is that if you're working for some employer and the person that you're doing such and such for is soulless, so let's say I don't know, let's say big corpo tech, whatever, they ask you out of the goodness of your heart to come in on a Saturday and work. No, eat shit, go fuck yourself. That's not what I'm talking about. Never. I would never do that. That is absolutely not. However, like we're talking about like personal relationships, like, if it's your mom or your best friend or even just a friend of a friend, right? You're doing a favor for somebody. That's when there's no point. You're screwing over another individual. Screwing over, a big corpo, do it. Don't come to work, skip work. I'm a proponent of that all the way through, right? This is where I kind of contradict myself. 100%, absolutely not. Do not do anything for free for those giant corporations. As much as they might feel like a paternalist figure to you, they are not. They're a soulless entity. Don't do anything for them. Do everything, charge money for them for anyway. So I agree in that sense. But in the sense that, like, if you're working with an individual, or you're thinking of like, if you're working, who's your client here? Who's the client, right? Who's being serviced with your skills, or your whatever your free labor is, right? Or your discounted labor, or your weekend, or whatever it is that you're sacrificing. Who is at the other end of it? Because if it's a soulless corporation, forget about it. Do not do it. But if it's another person who you're probably going to see again, or if it's a friend of a friend, or if it's your uncle, that whatever, it's okay, right? And don't get roped into doing projects with your uncle. I'm just saying, if there's like a quick and easy something, need to fix their unplug and replug in their HDMI cord, don't charge them tech support fee for something like that. But big corpo, by all means, screw them over. I think part of the problem is that we have, and I say we, I just mean society at large, has like personified a lot of businesses, and because everything has their own image now. Because think about it, businesses that have their image, or corporations or nonprofits, they have an image, right? Sometimes the image is just the whatever jackass CEO it is, right? Sometimes that's the corporate image, but even since a lot of them have their own like PR style, their own brand. It's all branding, right? They all have their own set of branding, and I think the issue is we begin to see those things as like humans or extensions of humans, right? If we view the Wendy's Twitter as like a human, right? Where we tend to treat it as if it were like, a part of our local system, right? Somebody that, you could, do barter with and be nice to, and hey, I scratch your back, you scratch mine, kind of thing. But, you can't forget that they are not, Wendy's is not not local by any means, right? They are a giant corporation. I'm not saying Wendy's in particular. They're probably mostly benign, just making, giving people heart disease and stuff. That's honestly probably the smallest of sins. If we look at corporate sins nowadays, heart disease, come on, that's pretty light. But no, but you can't view them as, they're not human. They're not human, right? Even just like school systems are not human, universities are not human, businesses of all shapes and sizes, they are not human. So don't treat them as human, right? Don't act like you're doing something for human, even if they're represented in your mind by, I don't know, your boss, who's like such a nice guy, or you don't want to screw over your boss or something. Think about who they're representing, right? Are you doing this for the individual, or are you doing this for this personification of an entity? Is it a business entity you're doing this for? And I don't know, and I guess there's some silver lining between, like, if you're looking at a mom and pop shop, it's a little bagel shop or something, and sure, I think that's fair to kind of treat them as the entity of the mom and pop that are running that, but don't treat, Wendy's or Taco Bell or something as like this, as having any bit of humanity, because they don't, right? They're truly soulless in all ways, shapes, and forms. So I don't know. I feel like we are personifying so much of companies, and maybe it's just an extension of this financialization that I've talked about of all the markets. Everything just becomes financialized, and it creates these larger human-like personas out of non-human, soulless things. That it feels dystopian to me that we give any kind of autonomy or branding, so to speak, to businesses that that often don't have our interest at heart. So I don't know. It's one thing to view a mom and pop brand as something, but it's another thing to view big tech corpo as a brand thing. And so I don't know. I think people often get they can attach even real humanity to these companies, and then use that as an excuse to get exploited by them, right? So that's where the economist, no such thing as a free lunch, or don't do anything for free. Like axioms make more sense in some ways, but because if you always treat it like that, you're not very likely to get screwed over by a corporation. But I think if you apply that in a personal sense, right? If you think small village for a minute, and applying that is negative. So, but if you're working at a big tech company and your boss is, your view of the company is, your boss who's a super nice guy who just, he wants his job just like you want your job, and he's asking you to come in on a Saturday. It's easy to kind of to coagulate and mix like the interests of the business between the interests of your boss, right? And I don't know, it can be dangerous to personify businesses and things, or to attach humanity to them, because they're not human. We have to remember what humans are. I don't know. I suppose there's a more meta discussion on what is humanity now. Is your AI bot human? Who have you been talking to and getting close with? Are they? How much humanity do they have? Right? I don't know. I don't know. There's probably some amount of. Again, I know emotions are technically just physiological signals in the brain. So I suppose at some point we'll have a real argument about humanity. But to this, at this point, we know that the robots can only emulate human emotion. They can pretend to have it, but they don't. They're not. They're incapable of feeling in the same sense that we are feeling. So again, I don't know. There's a lot of. It's very, very difficult to pin that down. But that's really more of a metaphysics discussion, and I don't know. I don't have the. I'm not in the right headspace to tackle that at the moment. I don't know. So I will digress. I don't know. Headspace does vary for me a lot. Sometimes I'm in, and maybe it's just a mood thing. Maybe it's normal, but some days I'm fired up. Other days I'm very calm. Even the other day I felt like I was nothing humored me. Right. I think I was watching videos that were unable to get me to smile and crack. Other days I'm giggling at everything. So I don't know. It's probably just a very normal thing, just dealing with moods and whatnot. But it does feel strange that the same stimuli under otherwise the same circumstances can be very, very different, only because you're in some different mood, right? And there's probably a lot that controls that. But I talked about it before, like the what you're looking at, consuming, and doing, eating, reading, writing, sleeping, all that can have a significant impact on what your mood is. But I do think there's a lot of randomness to it, because even eating the same Chipotle bowl and the same, eggs every morning, I can still be in wildly different moods depending on different things. So I don't know. Some days I'm contemplative and can dive into topics, like these meta discussions. But I'm not feeling very meta right now, so I will avoid that. Quick note, I suppose this has nothing to do with what we were just talking about, but this is just my first time, I suppose, really just getting into the game here to play on my GNU/Linux OS, and performance is immaculate. It's just absolutely. I literally think it's double. It's actually twice the FPS of what it was before. And I realize it's Minecraft, so it's not like it's some super demanding game, but it's the exact same set of mods. It's the same Fabric client, and just running on a different OS, and it is worlds apart in terms of performance. Very, very different. Like I think down here in the bottom, I used to be getting like 250 FPS, and I'll be up to 500 here in a second. And then in my main area, I actually had FPS had dropped to like 60 or 80 in some parts, and normally stayed around 90 to 100, which is still very, very good. You don't really see those differences that much, but now it's well over, it's 120 everywhere pretty much, and my monitor's only 120 hertz, the refresh rate, so it doesn't, I literally can't even see a difference anywhere in the world anymore. And yeah, I'm at 550 FPS. This is just ridiculous. But I guess performance isn't a joke. So performance boost is quite significant here. The only difference is now I can't play COD and stuff, but it's okay. I don't play that much anyway. So, but anyway, yeah, if you only play Minecraft and you're looking for a performance boost, stop using Windows. I don't know. But yeah, very, very interesting. So let's see. Thinking about, I guess this kind of has to do with, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but what is it that humans really desire, right? And we surely have our physical desires, whatever those. I should probably have the pyramid brought up at this point to look at it. But I really wonder what the not the science behind Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but how did he come up with that, right? I'm not saying it's not exhaustive, because it, I don't know, it seems good, but surely how scientific was the discovery, or not even the discovery, the delineation of those needs, right? I don't know. But obviously, for discussion on needs, I'm going to ignore the basic primitive ones, because those aren't very complicated, right? I think we've nailed down those. We're not like dying because we're not sure, we forget that we need to eat. It's obvious, right? We do that pretty easily. But I'm thinking more on the levels of like self-actualization, and what kind of relationships and things do we need? Freedom, do we need that, right? Some people, I'm sure there'd be different people who would argue against the need for freedom of some kind, or they would define freedom differently enough to where some people would say we need it, some people don't. And I don't know, a lot of it comes down to definitions, because if you define freedom in some weird way, it's possible that we don't need it, right? We just need like autonomy, which you define differently from freedom. But I don't know, it's the definitions can always make things get really hairy. That's one thing about using language to as a medium to discuss, is language is very, very imperfect, and by nature that allows us to do stuff like write poetry with different meanings and have stories and things that can mean different things to people and be meaningful in more ways than one, instead of like being mathematical, right? Because mathematics, I guess partially because how we define it only really has one meaning. And not to say there's one solution for things, because there's not, but there's one meaning behind, 2 + 2 + 4. There's no way of interpreting that in a different way, right? Whereas you could read a poem and be like, oh, I felt sad here. And it's like, oh, well, the author actually felt happy, whatever. But language being imperfect allows us for a lot of vagueness that makes, I suppose, logical discussions quite difficult, because every word is not defined the same between parties that are arguing. Again, even in our discussion that I just mentioned of like freedom versus autonomy and do humans need it, if we were to have like some kind of debate on that, it'd be difficult, because we'd have to probably first spend the first 20 minutes deciding what our definitions of these things are, right? What is our definitions of that? And then within the definitions, you can always get more granular with these, right? I'm not sure. Like I could define freedom as the lack of influence of something, right? The absence of influence, we'll say. But then, right? Okay, what is absence? What is true absence? What is true influence? What counts as influence? What counts as absence? You can go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper in the rabbit hole everywhere, at every word pretty much, because language is by nature is imperfect. And if my only view in my own head of freedom is just burgers and hot dogs at a cookout, then it's going to be a difficult time to get on the same page if someone's other view is I don't know, guns and shooting people, right? Like that's two very different views of freedom. But it's hard for us to have a logical discussion, logic being something more concrete than, an analysis of abstract art, that it makes it very difficult to use. So I'm not advocating for any different medium of arguing, so to speak, but I'm curious to know if there's any alternative means of thinking about or discussing things that don't rely on very subjective views of how things are defined. Because I don't know, I guess if you look at it that way, and this is where things can get kind of hairy. If you look at it that way, all the papers, scientific papers, all this stuff, like you read into it, and if you begin to question the definitions of even the most basic words they use, you can start to corrupt what they're saying a little bit, right? And if you define things in different ways, it's okay. Well, now we're looking, and I realize not everything is defined as loosely as something like autonomy or freedom, but there are certainly levels to things that are defined very concretely and things that are defined more abstractly. And especially if we're talking about social sciences, love, how do you define that, right? If you were a chemist, you define it as some process of serotonin and dopamine or something in the brain, or a physiological response. As an artist, you could describe it as indescribable. I don't know. Like there's all these different ways of looking at it, and I suppose one way to do it is just try and be as concrete as possible. If you define everything in physiological terms, right, then it's easier that way. But even then, let's say you define it as a significant release of serotonin and dopamine in the brain. Okay, well, what counts as significant, right? And so let's say I do heroin, and it emulates that same amount of serotonin and dopamine in the brain. Okay, so am I in love? Is it my love with heroin now? Is that how it works? It's like, well, no. There's fine. It has to involve another party. It's okay. Well, what is it as a party? Let's define that. Is that a human? Can it be a dog? Then you just kind of go into this whole thing where even something that is supposed to be defined concretely is we're going to use science to define this. We're now in the weeds of what the hell what counts as another party, right? Because otherwise there's not really what's a scientific way to define love. Okay, there isn't one, right? So we can't even really have a discussion on that. So I don't know. There's the perversion of language is an interesting concept, and how it is very, very individualized. Even our individual views of the same language are quite different. And you could see that, okay, we're both communicating using English, but in a lot of ways, this can be just as ineffective as some people communicating on different languages, right? You could understand somebody better who's speaking Chinese, but you just kind of read their body language a little bit about what they're talking about, versus somebody who's speaking English who just has different word definitions than you and is viewing things completely different, just by speaking the same language, right? I don't know. I just think it's interesting to think about that we may be on the same page in terms of the same language, but we might be on completely different thought processes in terms of what we're on. Sorry. But yeah, I don't know. It's very interesting that language is so fickle and is something that we use when we rely so heavily on language, but it's quite flawed, actually. I don't know, I'm not saying that we should do everything in terms of mathematics, but it's interesting to consider how flawed our language is in the greater scheme of things, and how much, I don't know, contention is based upon that, right? People saying something, right? Someone could say something, and the words can be the end of your your social existence in a lot of ways. So words are very, very important in that regard, but yet at the same time they're quite fickle in terms of what they truly represent and what they truly mean, right? Because you can say things in the same language, maybe the same person says the same thing in the same language, but the tone becomes really important, the body language becomes really important, context is really important. All that is important understanding what the meaning of it is. Even if you look at if the context in which I say the word love might be indicative of the different meanings that I mean by certain things, and all that requires a lot of nuance. And especially if you begin to remove nuance from discussions, and view things as, well, this word means this always, then it becomes very, very difficult to actually use it as a medium of communication that is reliable. Then it's just a bunch of, at that point it's, phooey. It hardly means anything anymore. But I don't know. I suppose you could take that in the direction of people getting canceled for saying stuff, but I don't know. I wasn't really thinking of it in that sense when I when I started this this discussion. So I don't know. Anyway, yeah, let's see. What else can I talk about? I don't know. I suppose this is kind of a horse that I beat down constantly, but I feel like I just consistently come back to this idea that people are very politically engaged and engaged in what goes on, and I am quite disengaged on purpose. Because they see themselves as having some kind of influence on something, or they see it as important that they know, right? It's important that I know what's going on. And it's like, well, why? It's like, okay, well, there's the whole like, oh, I can vote kind of thing. And I kind of, I don't know. I kind of dribbled on that a week or so ago. And then, I don't know, it's something where it in my eyes, the impact is palpable and is every day. Is they're apathetic, right? So the way I look at this, and what I chalked down over here was that there's a significant subset of people that are politically enthusiastic yet technologically apathetic, right? And they view their medium of change through a political lens, and they ignore the technological capacity and capabilities that they might have at their fingertips, right? Because we view technology as, oh, it's this wonderful thing. It's like you can do all this stuff with tech, but then they view their only impact on the world as like, voting and stuff like that, right? And there are and they're actually right that technology allows you to do a lot of things and make influence on the world, but you don't seem to care about how to actually do any of that. You just want to instead read the news and to complain about stuff and vote and whatnot. And I don't know, it just seems like an attitude that is, I think, is hypocritical, because the way I see it, this is a whole opinion piece anyway, is that you politically you have, unless you actually do have influence, which I guess suppose we could argue about if you're some politician or you're important, odds are you're not important at all politically, and I fall into that category. No one cares what I have to say. My vote doesn't matter, or at least I hold the belief that it doesn't. Nothing I can do, say, or keep a date with, or a news article I can read and send and argue the Thanksgiving dinner table, whatever, all of that is going to be bleh. No one cares. Totally worthless. But technologically, there's plenty of things I can do, even to make political impacts, right? And especially if you view things through an individual impact lens in terms of things that, negative impacts on our society. Like you could say that social media has I hate social media is bad and we should have regulation against it and blah, blah, blah. Instead of leveraging, right, you have the computing power we have at today's, at our disposal, today's day and age is incredible. And yet it seems it's increasingly squandered as time goes on. They say I forget this all. It's like the Moore's law. There's like several extensions of Moore's law, which is it's the halving of the size of the transistor every 18 months, which is basically like the little the building block of computers or transistors, the little switches that go from 0 to 1, and it halves every 18 months. And sure, we might be starting to violate Moore's law pretty soon because we're reaching subatomics, quantum physics, instead of we're exiting the realm of macro scale physics. So it's that might not be true anymore. But either way, Moore's law is like transistor doubles, so computing power doubles. At least raw computing power of the same thing doubles as every 18 months. And then one extension of that is that as software speed doubles, the complexity and I guess the bloat of software quadruples. So as things get faster, like if something has a computer is twice as fast, the applications get 4 times as slow. And that's kind of why you see that old 90s computers are still like, they're snappy, they're responsive and whatnot. And that's just kind of testament to how bloated a lot of modern applications and things are. And then I'd be willing to add on top of that is as processing speed doubles, as software complexity quadruples, unnecessary software complexity quadruples, the knowledge of such systems goes up by eightfold, the apathy of knowledge, it goes up by eightfold. So you have, I guess there's an eighth of the 25% of the people less at each iteration understand and can use the technology to their advantage. So, instead of 100% of people understanding, the computer in the 90s, and then it becomes, applications become twice as slow, and the knowledge becomes a quarter of that. So instead of 100 people knowing, 25 people know, right? Or 25% of people know. So it's kind of my own extension of that axiom in the sense that people, as things get stronger and more powerful, people are less and less likely to care at a clip that is twice the software bloat and 4 times the processing speed. So it's, I don't know. I just think it's a funny little idea that it's also kind of sad in some ways, because it is sad that our systems are getting so much more powerful, and yet we care less and less to utilize it, right? And obviously coming from this Linux evangelism side of things, where I'm promoting the understanding and usage of technology for its benefits, but I will continue to be critical of its impacts, especially as people are continually apathetic towards it. And so I don't know. It's my own little extension of Moore's law and whatever else the other law on top of that is, but I don't know. And I suppose along that same vein, this is just another frustration that I deal with daily. I deal with a lot of, in my work, so to speak, not that I think of myself as some employee of some kind, but in my work, I deal with a lot of people who have early business ideas, a lot of early stage, quote unquote, entrepreneurs, as you call them. And I've noticed, so there's less and less technical people looking for guidance. Most of the time, the people that are technical and truly understand systems, a lot of times are very, very, well, a lot of times they're very antisocial, but they tend not to need much guidance and help on certain things. And even they might view even just like a problem with marketing as a technical problem or something that they need to figure out how to leverage technology for, but it's not that they need some conceptual help and understanding what, they don't need to cut and paste some marketing, copy or something stupid like that. But the ideas seem to be getting, not to say stupider and stupider, but yes, they're getting stupider and stupider. And I'm not even really sure how to respond to some ideas anymore, because it almost makes me question what kind of headspace they're in when they come up with this and decide to spend any time on it. Because we all have bad ideas, right? I'm not out here promoting that all my ideas are good and blah 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 blah. But a lot of times it's not. The ideas are worthless at a very basic level. Execution is everything. But even the ability to recognize, this idea is really stupid. It seems to be fleeting. That people they view, oh well, since all startups start as these really really crazy kind of out of the box ideas, that doesn't nullify the fact that you can still have a really really stupid idea, and there should under no circumstances should you be pursuing this. And it's not because Uber sounded crazy and Apple sounded crazy. I think the idea of this garage startup, Silicon Valley in the 90s and 2000s, I think a lot of that is behind us now. I don't think we're going to see another revival of these things, and where every dumb idea is going to have I suppose with AI companies, actually, that's the opposite is true. So I suppose if your idea has AI in it, then I don't know, you can at least get funding. Well, I don't know, money's dried up a lot, but I don't know. The idea is it seems to get stupider and stupider and stupider, and I don't know. I guess I had some really dumb ideas, but that I was gonna they're like fake ideas. They're ideas that I swore I could have heard at some point in my daily happenings, but they're more of memes than anything. But and a lot of them move towards trying to make life easier for people, and maybe it's just me taking a contrarian view on that. I think in some ways life doesn't need to be any easier for people. Making it easier is not going to help them, right? And I guess the really stupid idea that I had was, when you wake up and you have those there's little white balls. I forget what they're called. Maybe they have a name. They probably do have a name, but those little white balls are in your eyes that kind of, I'm not sure if it's stuff that your eyelids clean themselves of it, and then like put it in these little white balls that are kind of on the inside of your eyes, like right where your nose is. And I was thinking, and I had like a daydream that somebody was going to come up to me and be like, oh, I have this idea where it's going to be an AI powered assistant. It's going to remove those little white dots from your eyes. And I remember like thinking to myself, I was like, I really, I honestly, I would not be surprised if someone came to me and pitched that idea and stood behind it with a straight face. I'm like, really, how is this a problem? This is not even menial. Menial is actually insulting, or trivial is insulting to the extent of this quote unquote problem, such that I don't know what to tell you if you view this as an improvement. People on average spend 5 minutes of their life removing these little white balls from their eyelids, and our machine's gonna take it, and then we're gonna have a subscription service. It's like, I don't know, it's crazy how we're seeing all these improvements in computing technology, all these the disimprovements, downgrades in our ability to leverage it to something helpful. Right? They're just leveraging it to do something, make something dumb, or to sell people on stuff. I don't know, I'm very anti-subscription model too, and I don't know, there's very few things that warrant a subscription. But now everything's a subscription, and it more or less just removes and continues to remove ownership of things away from people, which I don't view as a good thing. And it's an extension of this financialization of stuff. So I'm a proponent of local stuff, local first software, local first hardware, like those Ring cameras and things. I think security cameras, not surveillance cameras because they're different. Security cameras are a good technology. We should use them, but the way they're implemented is wrong. Right? They're implemented so they record footage, they send it back to some servers, and then if you want to, you can pay to access like the security footage that you get. It's like what, why? Okay. No, it should be hosted on your land. No one should have your security footage anywhere beyond, like outside of the radius of your home. But economically, it doesn't make sense to do that, because you can always make more money if you get the data yourself. You can use it to train AI models, and you can leverage that data to do whatever you want. And I don't know. I'm believing more and more that data accrued or data gathered of any kind is always going to be used in the worst possible way. I've yet to see any, reliable instance of times where data was used, data was not eventually used in a way that was entirely nefarious. Not saying that all data collection and usage is bad, because it's not. In fact, I think a lot of early usages of data collection is great. Aggregate, you can find very interesting insights on data you would not know was otherwise there. But the axiom being that eventually it is ruined. Eventually somebody uses it in a nefarious way, and that's kind of another reason why I think like data protection is important. So it's not that like your individual data it's not valuable. There's no really reason to protect it, by itself. But the issue is, and sure, fine, somebody gets your email address, like, oh no, someone's going to send you a little spam email, whatever. The issue is, especially as that data accumulates and it's aggregated, eventually it will be used to do terrible things. We've already seen that, right? Databases of terabytes are sold on the dark web all the time, of U.S. consumers and emails of everybody, and they're all always used for terrible stuff, right? What about your grandparents' email? They're going to use that to scam them out of money and stuff. And especially as people become more technologically apathetic, they understand less and less how it all works, and they have no interest in learning, understanding. They leverage it more and more. So it's not like you're an Amish person saying, "Oh, I don't need to understand technology." It's like, yeah, no, you don't. You're Amish. Great. Like you're actually a Chad. But no, the people are leaning into it more and more, right? I'm going to buy the VR goggles. I'm going to buy all this stuff, and then understanding it less and less and less, and then valuing their personal data less and less, which I think will eventually be used against them, as as we've seen, and it's bleak. I don't know. It's very bleak. I'm very tempted to put a, I suppose in some circles I have put a time, like a kind of a timeline on, not on humanity, so to speak. I don't think it's all going to end, but a collapse on our kind of modern Western society, right? And I'm going to make a bold prediction here, and this is kind of my weird tinfoil hat type time. So if you're not feeling conspiratorial, now's the time to exit. But I say things start to look really bad in about a decade, about 10 years. Things look really bad, and maybe everyone knows it's really bad, right? I kind of already think it's really bad, but it's possible there's still a lot of okay stuff going on. But 10 years is going to be really bad. In 20 years is kind of where I put the start of the collapse, right? Maybe by 30, I think we're in a different era, so to speak. Things have changed. Things will be changing, and I don't know. That's just kind of the way that's the timeline, I think. That's my view of it. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope things flip around and people, because it comes down to people ultimately. It's not like, as much as I believe in the perversion and personification of business entities, it's still people ultimately that represent and choose to do things on behalf of those institutions, right? It's people that choose to represent businesses and institutions in ways that become unsavory. Still people at the end of the day. But I don't know, soon, hopefully people get their head out of their ass and don't do it. I don't know. Another kind of scary and sad thing that I heard the other day, and again, this is totally anecdotal, so it's not like I'm pulling stats out of a book here. Somebody said he was talking to like a high school gym teacher, and it's high school, by the way. And he said out of all the students in the class, only 2 or 3, I think he said 1 or 2, but I'll say 2 or 3 just to make myself feel better, could look the teacher in the eye. They couldn't even look, they couldn't look somebody in the eye. And I guess that got me thinking, like, okay, well, how good am I at this? I'm like, okay, I think I could do a better job at this. But it's also, no one looks anybody in the eye anymore. And, we look into the eye of Amazon and Facebook. We look into their eyes all the time, and we have this romantic, relationship with these personified apps and programs and applications that we don't know anything of. We look right into their eyes and say, yes, I want this Amazon package delivered to me tomorrow. I'll pay Amazon Prime shipping. But then we can't even look, the gym teacher. And I guess the other part of this is that, like, who wants to look a gym teacher in the eye? But even it's just normal human interactions. You should be looking people in the eye, right? When you're talking to them, you should be looking, and obviously I'm not saying stare at them like, a psychopath, but there's the fact that they're incapable of and can't look people in the eye is telling. And it's not that I'm not saying that this is true that only, 1, 2 every 50 high schoolers can look people in the eye. I just think, generally speaking, I don't have big data to back this up, but that's, go fuck yourself. That's kind of the point of these hypotheses. I said the amount of people that are able to do that is going down. So less and less people are able to interact with is what I would call normal interactions, right? Because if you stop looking humans in the eye, then you begin to no longer see humanity, literally, because you can't see them. You're not looking at humans. You're not talking to them. All you're interacting with is GUI applications. You're not even interacting with the command line of a computer, right? You're scared of a command line, right? So if you're interacting with technology and you're scared of a command line, that's terrible, right? I think I'm honestly more and more talking myself into this idea of like a digital driver's license, right? If the command line scares you enough not to use it, you don't deserve to use Facebook. You don't deserve to use Chrome. You don't deserve to use any of it. Now, you should never use Chrome. I'm not saying you have to do everything from the command line, but I actually do pretty much everything from the command line, right? And I think that's good. That's because I'm not scared of it, because I understand it enough. I'm still learning more about it. I am open and actively invested in learning new things, because it's part of our society now. So even if I wanted to, I think I would be allowed to look Facebook in the eyes. But if you can't, I don't think you should. So it's a argument for a driver's license of sorts. And I don't know. But I don't know. Certainly terrifying to see a younger generation growing up that doesn't seem to acknowledge humanity. Not saying that they don't speak about being human and whatnot, but I don't know, the greater social implications and problems that have been created from a overuse and a lack of understanding of technological systems is dangerous. Because I honestly truly think that the more if you learn about the technology that you use every day and you begin to understand it and take an active interest in understanding how things work and what happens, you'll actually stop using a lot of it, because you'll realize how terrible it is. And I'm speaking only from anecdotal experience, so I suppose if you don't value my opinion, that's fine. But truly, the more and more I use things like, okay, this is what this is doing under the hood. Okay, I know this is what this is doing, and then I'm like, no, I don't need this. Right? This is bad. We don't need this. Right? But the more you choose to neglect understanding of it, the more it seems okay, right? Oh, well, it's just Chrome. What's so bad about Chrome? It's Chrome. Stop using it, right? Chromey. So I don't know. I'm gonna really lean into this Chromey thing here pretty soon. So if you are using Chrome and you don't see the big difference, and you don't agree, and you think you can learn technology, right? If you prove to me that you're technologically capable of installing a new browser, switch to Firefox or Pale Moon or LibreWolf or Tor, or even there's or links. Use command lines. Quit using these GUI browsers. Don't let the command line scare you. Everything's GUI now, and I didn't even realize that. It wasn't until probably a year or so ago that I learned. I realized that everything that I'd ever interact with on a computer is just all GUI. It's all GUI, and computers don't think in GUIs, right? They don't think that, oh, this little icon should be doing this. They don't think nothing thinks in terms of a GUI, right? You're just so used to seeing GUIs all the time, you're incapable of seeing what happens under the hood and what the computer's actually getting. Not that I'm fluent in machine code, because I'm not, but I still know that before it gets to machine code, it's not a GUI. Like, the GUI is like the farthest abstraction from the actual use, what the computer actually does with it. That I think it's dangerous to view everything as a GUI. So I don't know. I'm being a little alarmist right now, but I think it's good. Again, like I said before, I think people should be more opinionated on things. So that's my opinion. My opinion is that this over GUIification of everything is a problem. So I don't know. Stop using Chrome. Anyway, peace out.